Hello, this is James George with Create a Beacon, and this week I'm going to show you how to create your own custom brush from anything in Photoshop. And so, I'll just give you a little example. If you want to, you're not stuck with the normal brushes inside of Photoshop. They've got a lot of great brushes to start out with, but let's say you wanted your own custom brush. Well, you're not stuck with just the presets. You can actually create your own from anything that is set to black and white. And so, just so you know, when you create a custom brush, it is a good idea to understand how it works. And so anything that is white within an image or a shape is not going to be included in the brush, but anything that is 1% of gray all the way to 100% black, what I mean is pure white is not going to show up, but anything from just a little bit of gray all the way to black is going to show up. And that's how you create your own custom brushes. And so, I'll give you an example. Let's say we'll go to the rectangle tool and go down to custom shape, and let's just pick a shape. I'm gonna pick this rounded shape. I'm gonna set the color to black, and I'm just going to draw out the shape. There it is. Okay, so with that being said, you've got this vector shape, and it's black, and there's nothing else that's white. And so you can do one of two things. You can select it like that and go to Define Brush Preset, which means it will be a rasterized brush, or you can have it selected as a shape, and it will be a vector brush. And so Define Brush Preset, Sample Brush. It'll be 251 pixels in diameter. And so click OK. And so if you go up to brushes and go up to this little panel here and scroll down, there it is. There's your brush. And so you could stop there, but I'll show you some other things that you can do to create, make the brush as custom as you want it. And so once you've created your brush, you don't need this layer anymore, so you can get rid of it. And I'll just create a new layer. And we have this brush selected, and this will show you how it works. You can see this is your preview right here, and all I did was I went to brush. So if that panel's not up, you just go to Window, Brush. And so this is where you control how your brush behaves. And so right now, when you paint with this brush, that's what you get. You just get the basic shape. But if you want to change it or alter it, you can do so right inside this panel. And so if you want to increase it, you can increase the size right here, or you can increase it yourself just by using the open bracket and close bracket key to increase and decrease. And so from here, you can control just about anything. And so let's say you wanted to make it not so round. You can click and drag this and make it flatter. And you can click the arrow and drag it to change the angle. I'll change that back now. Okay, and so you can also change the spacing of your brush as well. So instead of what it was before, you can spread it out a little bit. And so when you click and drag, that's the effect you get. It's got space in between it. Another thing that you can do, I'll just flip through these and show you what, how it works. And so I added space in between these. We'll go down to Shape Dynamics and check that. And so size jitter makes the size vary as you're drawing it. So you draw it and it can be big 1 minute and then it can go back to being small. You can also control the minimum diameter, which means it won't get any smaller than whatever you set to. Say 25%, it won't get any smaller than 25% of the original 304 pixels that we set it at. You can also set how it's controlled. So if you have a Wacom tablet, you can set it to pen pressure, pen tilt. You can set it to fade as you draw it, and so it will tend to fade as you're drawing it. And you can control the percentage right here. Angle jitter means that it will twist and turn on its axis. Like 1 minute it could be vertical, or it will twist to the side or to the other side. And depending on what you set this at is the amount of how far it will turn from one side to the other. And you can set the controls just like here, to pen pressure, to fade. Roundness jitter means it will get flatter or rounder just at random. And that's set to the same controls. And you could set the minimum roundness as well. Then here you can flip the X or Y jitter and the brush projection, which means how far it projects. Scattering is a great little section because you can control how far it's spread out vertically, and so as you draw along, I'll make this smaller. As you draw along, it you may draw in a straight line, but it'll vary along that line. And this is how you create really natural, random sort of patterns or textures inside of Photoshop. And you can also set it to both axes, so you get a lot more variation. But it's a lot more random as well, so it just really depends on the effect that you want. Count is how dense your brush is, how many of these brushes actually, instances of these brushes actually appear. So the more you bump it up, you can see the more it shows up. And so let's say we set that at 3. Maybe I'll bump it down to 2. Count jitter means that itself will vary. So it could be dense in one area and it could be really scattered in another area. And you have this control as well. If you want your brush, your vector brush that you created, to have a texture, the important thing is to notice the mode here. And so I think it's by default set to overlay. But if you set it to multiply, that's when this effect is applied to your brush. And so our brush now has that striped effect to it. Or you can change it to any one of these patterns. So if you wanted the checkered effect, you've got a checkered brush. There's also noise if you wanted it to be, a soft sort of spotty brush. And that really makes it take the effect. And the same goes for dual brush. I'm actually going to turn the texture off. Okay, and then in dual brush, it's the same effect. If you set the mode to multiply, and there's different blend modes, and it really depends on what you're looking for. Overlay. It really also just depends on the color of your brush too. If you have gray or black or something like that, it will have a different effect on it. So I set it to multiply, and what it's doing is it's multiplying, or this dual brush basically is using a brush to mask the current brush that you're using, and so that ends up being your effect. It sort of masks it with the brush that you select. I usually leave that turned off, but it's something to think about if you're going for a certain effect. And color dynamics allows you to set how it behaves with color. And so if you have a foreground and a background color, you can have foreground and background jitter. So let me change this to something besides white, like a blue. And it will jitter back and forth between green and blue. See, it's a little bit green here and a little more bluer green here. And so if I set that to 100%, it adds more of the foreground and background variation. And so hue jitter just makes it jitter between different colors. You can see there, and you can apply per tip, and you can see how it goes back and forth. And so saturation jitter, it could be a really saturated color 1 minute, and then like you see right here, it's really muted the next minute. And the same goes for brightness. And purity is the purity of the mix of colors. And so that's the first half of the brushes. I know we're running kind of long here, and the next time I'll show you transfer and on down for part 2. So stay tuned next week for that. But essentially, this is how you can create your own brushes inside of Photoshop out of anything, including a custom shape, a photo, anything. Just remember to change that photo to black and white. Or if you mask something out of a photo and you want to turn that into a brush, make sure that it is set to black and white. Well, that's it for this week. I'm James George, and this is Creative Beacon.